Hi, I'm Matt. I'm a current dietetic intern at Bowling Green State University, and then we're here with EFS to talk about today the leafy greens. Let's get started. What we're going to do today is we're going to examine what leafy greens are. We're going to discover tips for preparing and cooking leafy greens so you can get more nutrition out of your salads and your greens. And then we're also going to reveal the nutrition inside of leafy greens. So we're going to go into depth about what makes these nutritionally valuable. But first, leafy greens. They're in the vegetable group. Obviously, that's a gimme, and you probably already knew that. Pretty basic, but I really like to take this time to talk about vegetables and fruits, actually. As you see here, this is a picture of my plate, and I feel like I talk about this every presentation because it is really important that we get half of our plate of fruits and vegetables, and these are interchangeable. Leafy greens provide a great outlet to make half of your plate fruits and vegetables. We're going to talk about how exactly you can do that. So now that you know they're part of the vegetable group, what are leafy greens? Well, leafy greens are a wide variety of plant leaves classified as vegetables, sometimes accompanied by tenders or shoots. Leafy greens are also called leaf vegetables, pot herbs, vegetable greens, leafy greens, salad greens, and boiled greens. Those are popular names that you'll also hear this subgroup of vegetable be called in a grocery store. Now, there are 4 specific groups of leafy greens. Here on these slides, it gives you examples under each group, which we will go into depth later on in the presentation. So the 4 groups of leafy greens are the dark green lettuces, the cruciferous leafy greens, the amaranthus greens, and then the edible green leaves. Well, you're probably asking yourself, why are these important? Well, it's important because we eat a lot of leafy greens in this country. Lettuce and vegetable salads are the second most consumed vegetables behind potatoes. And potatoes are a little untouchable because potatoes are just in everything. On top of that, spinach and kale are the 2 most growing vegetables, and that's a good pun, but we consume these more and more every day. And then salads are the 3rd most popular side dish, and this is all based off of a USDA 2014 study, and it gives us a pretty good indication of how much leafy greens we can get. And what I want to teach you is exactly what leafy greens you should eat that will give you the most nutritional value. And I don't want you to think of salads as just being boring lettuce. Now, you're probably asking yourself, what do leafy greens do for my health? Well, here's a quick little overview of the topics that we're going to get into. They provide vitamins, minerals, carotenoids, fiber. They also provide a very small carbohydrate value, and then they also provide a very minimal amount of sodium, which is very important. So I'm going to get into detail with exactly which leafy greens provide these vitamins, minerals, fiber, and etc. So the first group we'll talk about is the lettuces. And you probably know what the lettuces are because they're probably the most popular. So examples of these would be romaine lettuce, green leafy, arugula, and butterhead lettuce. These are very important because they do provide vitamin A, C, and K, which helps improve your eyesight, helps you build strong bones, and helps your blood clot. The next group are the cruciferous leafy greens, and these got their name because they actually, the stem resembles a cross. Examples of these would be kale, mustard greens, collard greens, cabbage, and broccoli. Broccoli's kind of an outlier because broccoli falls into multiple subcategories of vegetables, but it is actually considered a leafy green vegetable as well. These are important because they provide carotenoids, and carotenoids help fight cancer because they reduce the risk of developing free radicals in the body. They provide magnesium, which helps regulate your heart, so it improves your overall heart health when you eat these. And then it also provides tryptophan. Now, I'm sure you recognize the word tryptophan from Thanksgiving turkey, but it does help more than just help you sleep. It actually helps boost your brain function because it helps regulate serotonin and dopamine in your gut. So by eating these, you can add more nutritional value to your salads and your meals. The next group is the amaranth group. These are very important because a lot of people, the next group is the amaranth group. Examples of these are spinach and Swiss chard. These are really important because I feel like a lot of people try to get their source of iron from either fortified products, such as cereals or grains, or they get iron from meat, specifically red meat. Well, another great source of iron are the amaranth leafy greens, such as spinach and Swiss chard. This is very important because in this country we tend to be iron deficient, and iron is really important because it helps carry oxygen throughout the blood, and without that oxygen, we wouldn't be able to survive. So eating these leafy greens helps regulate your iron in your body. And then the last group is the edible green leaves. These are kind of this is the interesting group of leafy greens because these are a little bit more uncommon, and maybe you'll think of some of these as typical weeds, but they're actually edible and they do add a lot of flavor to your meals, which I'll touch on later in the presentation. So examples of these would be dandelion, red clover, plantain, watercress, and chickweed. Dandelion greens, they actually help support the liver because they are high in vitamin A, and vitamin A is stored in the liver. Plantain and watercress, they help assist with skin integrity, so they keep our skin healthy and strong. And then red clover and chickweed possess anti-inflammatory processes, so they help reduce inflammation in the body. So that's why these 4 groups of leafy greens are really important. So let's learn a little bit about cooking with these leafy greens and how you can incorporate them a little bit more into your diet and be more than just a little bit more of a boring salad. So first thing I want to talk about is shopping for quality. When you're shopping for leafy greens, you want to look for leafy greens that are crisp, rich in color, and you want to make sure that they're not wilted. Then next, you want to avoid leafy greens that are slimy, yellowing, and brown. These slimy, yellowing, and brown leaves, they tend to taste bitter when you're cooking them. So when you're eating these and maybe you've stored them for a long time and you're noticing a really bitter taste, they're probably not good, and you should definitely throw them away. And going off of that, let's talk a little bit about storing your leafy greens. So after you buy your leafy greens, you want to make sure that you're removing twist ties or bands from around the stem. These can bruise the greens and make them wilt faster when you're storing them. For root vegetables, you want to make sure you're removing the greens from the vegetable before you're storing them. And then you want to use these greens 3 to 5 days after cutting them from the root, because once you cut them from the root, they don't have any source to maintain the structure of them, because the root is what basically keeps them alive. So once you cut them from the root, it'll take about 3 to 5 days for them to start wilting, becoming brown, yellowing. And that's just all leafy greens. They're going to do that over time, so you definitely want to make sure you're eating them within this time frame. And then for hardy and thick greens, such as your lettuces and like butterhead, even the dark leafy greens such as spinach and Swiss chard, you want to make sure you're washing them before storing them, and then once you wash them, you want to dry them. And then you also want to wash the lettuces in cool water and dry the leaves with a spinner or even a dry towel before storing them. And then you also don't want to store your leafy greens in grocery bags. I want to elaborate a little bit more on the last 3 things I just said. So making sure that you're washing your greens, drying your greens, and storing them, and not storing them in grocery bags. The reason why you don't want to do this is because that storing them in these conditions actually help promote the growth of bacteria. When they're moist or in a humid condition, there's a temperature zone that you want to stick within, and by leaving them in these in the bags or wet, you're promoting the growth of bacteria. Another thing that you can do that's relatively new to make sure that you are eating fresh and clean green leaves, you can use plant extracts, essential oils, and sanitizers. They have been proven to become effective. These products are still really scarce in stores and they may be hard to find, but the USDA is actually funding research to develop these products a little bit more so they are more common and people can use them so that we are preventing the growth of bacteria. So now that we know how to store them, we know how to buy them, and we know a little bit about the emerging research. The great thing about leafy greens is that they do add a wide variety of flavor and color. And here you can see that the different types of lettuces and leafy greens provide a variety of different flavors, such as the arugula and watercress. They provide a peppery flavor. And then romaine, obviously, as you probably know this, but they provide a crisp texture. So you can get a bunch of different tastes and flavors and also textures with these leafy greens. And you can incorporate them in many different things. So for example, when you're cooking with dark green lettuces, they're great for hearty salads. And then you can also combine them with fresh fruits and fresh vegetables to add a little bit more color and flavor into your salads. And then they're also great when you incorporate them in a wrap or pita. The leafy green components also really complement the protein. What I want to talk about is the amaranth greens and cooking with them. These are great because they boost in the nutritional value of raw salads. They add that peppery flavor, that spice, that kick to your salads. So you can chop them up or you can also keep them whole. You can also steam them and season them. They create a great side dish and they can complement different like coleslaws and even Chinese style dishes and things like that. Now let's move on to cooking with the cruciferous leafy greens. Boiling greens is very popular, so what you can do is bring a small amount of salted water to a boil. You can put them in a Dutch oven and then you can add the greens, cover the pan and cook them until they are tender. Then lastly, you would drain the greens and remove the excess liquid. Once they are cooked, you can add olive oil and seasoning for a really healthy side dish. They're also great in pastas and lasagnas and Italian style dishes. And then lastly, this is probably the most interesting one, is the edible greens. So like I mentioned before, they're great for flavoring up raw salads. They definitely encourage that bite that you may want in your salads because they are unique. They do provide very distinct flavors, and you should definitely try them in salads because they do provide tons of nutrition and great vitamins, great minerals. And then also they're great for stir fries, such as Chinese style dishes. They're great in gumbo, and a lot of people like to use them in soups, such as vegetable soup or even minestrone soup. All right, so now that we learned about the leafy green vegetables, what should you remember? Well, you should remember that leafy greens are categorized into 4 diverse groups. Leafy greens can add a great array of taste. And then lastly, leafy greens offer a multitude of health benefits. So there's great reasons for you to eat them. Thank you for listening to my presentation today. I hope you enjoyed.